The blizzard had been screaming across Frost Ridge for 3 days straight when the sky turned black with something worse than clouds. Owen Fletcher crouched beside the cave entrance, his breath forming ice crystals in the air as he watched the massive shapes descend through the storm. They moved wrong, like insects magnified 1,000 times, their bodies clicking and chittering loud enough to hear over the wind. His equipment beeped weakly in his pack. The temperature readings made no sense anymore. -70 and dropping. Nothing mechanical worked right on this ice ball of a planet, which was exactly why Owen loved studying the creatures that thrived here. Life always found a way, even when physics said it shouldn't. The creatures he'd been tracking for 6 months lived in these mountains. Magnificent beasts that looked like someone had taken an earth snow leopard, made it twice as large, added 4 more legs, and covered it in fur that sparkled like diamond dust. The local colonists called them ice ghosts. Owen called them beautiful. He had found their den 2 weeks ago. A pregnant female, her belly swollen with cubs. She had watched him from a distance, intelligent eyes tracking his every movement. He never got closer than 50 meters. Respect kept both species alive out here. The clicking sounds grew louder. Owen pulled out his binoculars, cursing as the lenses fogged immediately. Through the blur, he saw them clearly enough. The Kravik had finally come to Frost Ridge. Every colony in this sector had heard the stories. Words stripped border. Populations consumed. The Kravik swarm moved like a plague across the stars, and nothing stopped them. Colony 7 had defenses, plasma turrets, rail cannons, energy shields strong enough to stop a meteor strike. Owen's radio crackled to life with screams and weapons fire. He ran. The colony sprawled across a valley 5 kilometers from his research station. By the time Owen reached the ridge overlooking it, the battle was already lost. Plasma bolts lit up the darkness, each shot finding a target, each target splitting into 2 more Kravik. The creatures absorbed the energy blasts, their chitinous armor glowing briefly before fading back to black, but a rail cannon fired. The hypersonic round punching through 3 Kravik before the weapon seized up, frozen solid by the planet's cold. The gunner never got a second shot. Owen watched the shields fail next. The generators couldn't handle the temperature fluctuations. One moment burning hot from weapons fire, the next plunged back into sub-zero cold. Metal screamed as it contracted and shattered. The defensive perimeter collapsed in minutes. Thought he should run. Head back to his station, hide in the mountains, hope the Kravik missed him. Instead, Owen thought about the ice ghost and her cubs. The den was between here and the colony, right in the path of the swarm. The decision made itself. Owen ran along the ridge, taking the steep path that would get him to the den faster. His lungs burned in the freezing air. His fingers went numb inside his gloves. Behind him, the sounds of the colony dying echoed across the ice. He found her in the snow outside the den. The ice ghost lay on her side, her beautiful crystalline fur matted with dark blood. 3 Kravik scouts had found her first. Their bodies lay nearby, torn apart by claws and teeth, but they had been enough. Owen dropped to his knees beside her. Her chest still rose and fell barely. One massive eye opened, focusing on him with effort. She made a sound, somewhere between a growl and a whimper. Then her gaze shifted toward the den entrance. Inside, Owen found them. 3 cubs, each no larger than his boot. 2 weren't moving. The third, the smallest, trembled in the back of the den. Its fur shimmered white and silver, even in the darkness. 6 tiny legs curled beneath its body. Eyes too large for its head stared at him with absolute terror. Owen reached out slowly. The cub hissed, a sound like wind through ice crystals. Then something changed in its expression. Maybe it recognized that Owen was the same creature who had sat respectfully at a distance for weeks. Maybe it just knew it was alone. The cub stumbled forward on unsteady legs and pressed against Owen's chest. The ground shook. More Kravik were coming, following the scout's trail. Owen scooped up the tiny creature, tucking it inside his jacket against his body heat. It weighed almost nothing but felt solid, real, alive. That he ran again, this time toward the colony's emergency bunkers. If anyone had made it to shelter, That's where they would be. The cub's claws dug into his shirt, but didn't pierce the fabric. It seemed to understand it needed to hold on. The bunker entrance appeared through the blowing snow. Bodies lay scattered around it, colonists who hadn't made it inside in time. The heavy door stood open just enough for a person to slip through. Owen squeezed inside, and someone immediately slammed it shut behind him. Emergency lights cast everything in red. 27 faces stared at him. 27 people out of a colony of 300. Director Huang stood at the front, his uniform torn and bloody. "What is that?" Huang pointed at the movement inside Owen's jacket. Owen pulled the cub out just enough for them to see. It mewed softly, pressing closer to his warmth. A survivor, like us. Above them, the sounds of Kravik filled the world. Scraping, clicking, digging. The bunker's sensors showed hundreds of the creatures swarming over the colony ruins. Every weapon had failed. Every defense had crumbled. The cub looked up at Owen with eyes that reflected the emergency lights like tiny stars. It made a small chirping sound, almost like a question. Owen had no answers. Only a promise whispered too quietly for anyone else to hear. "I've got you. I promise." The bunker's walls trembled as something heavy landed on top of them. The real siege had just begun. 72 hours underground felt like drowning in slow motion. The bunker's recycled air tasted like metal and fear. Owen sat against the far wall with the cub curled in his lap, now twice the size it had been when he found it. The growth rate seemed impossible, but everything about Frost Ridge defied Earth biology. He had named it Frost during the first night. The name just felt right. Around them, the other survivors rationed food that wouldn't last another week. Director Huang had taken charge, organizing shifts to monitor the sensors and maintain the life support systems. The sensors told a grim story. Kravik covered the surface like a living carpet, tearing apart everything humans had built. Frost refused to leave Owen's side. When he stood, the cub stood. When he sat, it pressed against his legs. The other survivors gave them both a wide berth, especially after Frost had growled at a man who got too close on the second day. "You're wasting food on that thing." Huang appeared in front of Owen, arms crossed. "We need every calorie for humans." Owen looked down at Frost, who was gnawing on a piece of dried meat from his ration pack. The cub's teeth, still small, somehow crunched through the freeze-dried protein like it was paper. "Frost is a survivor too. It's an animal. So are we technically." Owen scratched behind Frost's ears. The cub leaned into the touch, making a rumbling sound deep in its chest. "Besides, I'm sharing my rations. Not yours." Huang's jaw tightened. "When we run out, don't expect charity." After he left, Dr. Amira Okonkwo slid down the wall to sit beside Owen. She was the colony's chief medical officer, though there wasn't much doctoring to do for the dead. "How's our smallest refugee?" "Growing fast. Too fast, maybe." Owen ran his hand along Frost's back. The cub had doubled in size again. Its head now reached Owen's knee when standing. The crystalline fur felt strange under his fingers, more like flexible glass than hair. "I've been reviewing my notes on the adult specimens. They can control their growth rate based on environmental stress." "Stress?" Amira laughed without humor. "Well, there's plenty of that." The lights flickered. Everyone froze. The bunker's generator coughed, sputtered, then steadied. Pete Larson's voice crackled over the intercom from the engineering section. "That's the third hiccup today. The cold is getting through the insulation. Metal's contracting in ways it shouldn't." Frost's ears perked up. The cub's head swiveled toward the bunker's main entrance, focused on something Owen couldn't hear. "What is it?" Amira whispered. Owen pressed his ear to the floor. Vibrations. Rhythmic. Getting closer. "They're digging." The sensors confirmed it minutes later. Kravik had started tunneling from 3 different directions. At their current rate, they would breach the bunker in less than 6 hours. Huang gathered everyone in the common area. "We have limited options. The weapons locker still has firearms and explosives, but nothing here is designed for this temperature. Guns might fire once before jamming. Explosives might not detonate at all. So we're trapped." Ruth Zimmerman spoke from the back. She had been the colony's best shuttle pilot. Now she was just another person waiting to die. We fight anyway. Huang started distributing weapons. When they break through, we make our stand. Owen accepted a pistol he knew wouldn't work. Frost pressed closer to his legs, the cub's body radiating warmth that seemed to defy the cold around them. That warmth gave Owen an idea that he pulled out his research tablet, scrolling through months of observations. Frost Ridge's ecosystem had evolved under conditions that destroyed human technology. The creatures here didn't use tools or machines. They used natural adaptations that functioned regardless of temperature. The ice ghosts were apex predators. Their prey included things with armor thick enough to stop bullets. So how do they hunt? Owen found his answer in a video file from 4 months ago. An adult ice ghost hunting a creature that looked like a walking tank covered in bone plates. The predator opened its mouth, and the sound that came out was visible, ripples in the air itself. The prey's armor cracked like glass, sonic weapons. Frequency-based attacks that didn't rely on temperature-sensitive mechanisms. Frost made a small sound. Owen looked down to find the cub staring at him with those two intelligent eyes. Can you do that? What your mother could do. The cub tilted its head, clearly not understanding the words, but sensing Owen's intent. A grinding sound came from the north wall. Metal shrieked as Kravik claws tore through the outer layers. Huang shouted orders, and people scrambled to defensive positions with weapons that might fire once if they were lucky. Frost's body went rigid. The cub's lips pulled back, revealing teeth that had grown sharp as razors overnight. A low growl built in its chest. Easy. Owen kept his voice calm. Easy, Frost. The north wall buckled. A Kravik mandible punched through, followed by a chitinous head the size of a chair. Someone fired. The gun jammed after one shot that ricocheted harmlessly off the creature's armor. Frost launched forward before Owen could react. The cub was fast, impossibly fast, crossing 10 meters in a heartbeat. It positioned itself between the Kravik and Owen, tiny body rigid with challenge. The Kravik pulled itself further through the gap. Its mandibles clicked together, dripping acid that hissed against the floor. Frost opened its mouth. The sound that emerged wasn't loud. It was pressure, force. The air itself became a weapon. Owen felt it in his bones, in his teeth, vibrating through his entire skeleton. The Kravik's head exploded. Not from impact, from the inside out. The sonic frequency had liquefied its internal organs, turning the creature into a shell filled with fluid that burst when the pressure became too great. Silence crashed down on the bunker. Everyone stared at the small creature standing in front of Owen, its body trembling from exertion. Director Huang found his voice first. What did it just do? Survive. Owen moved forward slowly, kneeling beside Frost. The cub immediately pressed against him, seeking comfort. The same way everything on this planet survives. By adapting. More sounds came from the walls. The Kravik weren't stopping. They were adapting too, coming from multiple directions now. Frost looked up at Owen with exhausted eyes. The cub had used everything it had for that one attack. It was barely more than an infant, and Owen had let it fight alone that he wouldn't make that mistake again. Owen wrapped his arms around Frost, feeling the rapid heartbeat against his chest. Rest. I've got you now. The walls began to crack in 3 places. Huang was shouting. People were screaming. Weapons that didn't work clattered to the floor. Frost closed its eyes and went limp in Owen's arms, trusting completely. The bunker's end had come. The maintenance tunnel smelled like ozone and death. Owen carried Frost through the darkness, one hand on the cub's warm body, the other following the wall. Behind them, the bunker's death screams echoed through the concrete passages. People he had shared meals with. People who had names and families and dreams of seeing Earth again. All gone in minutes. Frost stirred against his chest, still weak from that single devastating attack. The cub weighed more than before. Owen guessed it had grown to the size of a large dog now, but felt heavier than it should. Denser. The bones more solid. Evolution happening in real time. His foot hit something soft. Owen froze, reaching down carefully. A body. Cold, but not frozen yet. Ruth Zimmerman. She must have run when the walls came down. Almost made it. Frost whimpered, pressing closer to Owen's warmth. The cub could probably smell the blood. Owen kept moving. The tunnel split ahead. Left led deeper into the colony's ruins. Right led to the maintenance sublevel where the backup generators hummed on automatic. Owen chose right. If there was any chance of finding working equipment, it would be there. The temperature dropped with each step. His breath came out in clouds thick enough to obscure his vision. Frost's crystalline fur began to glow faintly, a bioluminescent response to the cold that Owen had noted in adult specimens. The light was barely enough to see by, but better than nothing. They found the generator room empty of Kravik. The machine still ran, pumping heat through pipes that led nowhere useful anymore. Owen set Frost down carefully on a metal table that wasn't quite frozen solid. The cub's legs wobbled but held. "Stay here. I need to look for supplies." Frost made a sound like breaking ice and immediately tried to follow. Owen gently pushed the cub back. "Please, I'll be right over there. You can see me." Those intelligent eyes stared at him for a long moment. Then Frost sat, body tense but obedient. The level of understanding in that gaze made Owen's chest tight. This wasn't just an animal. This was something more. That he found a medical kit with supplies that hadn't frozen yet. Some protein bars that were more ice than food. A flare gun with 3 shells. Not much to survive an apocalypse with. The door exploded inward. 3 Kravik warriors filled the entrance, each one twice as large as the scout that had breached the bunker. Their mandibles clicked a rapid conversation in sounds that hurt Owen's ears. They had been hunting. Now they had found prey. Owen grabbed the flare gun, knowing it was useless. The Kravik's armor would laugh at a glorified firework. But human instinct demanded he try. His finger found the trigger. Frost hit the first Kravik before Owen could fire. The cub moved like liquid violence, all 6 legs working in perfect coordination. It was bigger now. Faster, the size of a pony and still growing. Crystalline claws extended from paws that had been soft just hours ago. Those claws vibrated. Owen could see them blur, moving at frequencies that made the air shimmer. The Kravik's armor cracked like thin ice on a pond. Frost's claws didn't cut through. They shattered, molecular bonds breaking under vibrational stress. The warrior collapsed in sections, its exoskeleton falling apart. The pieces hit the floor and kept breaking down into smaller fragments, into dust. The second Kravik lunged. Frost met it head-on, opening that small mouth, and the world became pressure and pain. Owen's ears popped. His vision blurred. The concrete floor cracked in a spiderweb pattern radiating out from Frost's position. The Kravik warrior simply ceased being solid. Its body turned to slush inside its armor, then poured out through the cracks like spoiled milk. The third warrior showed something Owen had never expected from the Kravik. Fear. It turned to flee. Frost was faster. The cub's rear legs coiled and released, launching it across the room. It landed on the Kravik's back, claws finding purchase in the gaps between armor plates. Then came a sound Owen felt more than heard. Low frequency, deep enough to vibrate his internal organs. The Kravik's legs buckled. Its armor plates separated. The creature fell apart from the inside out, critical structural points liquefied by sound waves tuned to destroy. Frost stood among the carnage, sides heaving. The cub had grown again, now the size of an adult lion, maybe larger. Its fur glowed brighter, pulsing with each breath. When it turned to look at Owen, he saw something that made him forget to breathe. Intelligence. Strategy. Purpose. This wasn't random violence or animal instinct. Frost had analyzed each enemy and chosen the most effective attack pattern. Vibrational claws for the first. Sonic blast for the second. Low-frequency disruption for the third. Different solutions for different armor configurations. The cub limped toward him, favoring its front left leg. Dark blood matted the crystalline fur on its shoulder where a Kravik mandible had found flesh. Despite the injury, despite the exhaustion, Frost moved to position itself between Owen and the door, protecting him. Owen knelt, tears freezing on his cheeks. "You shouldn't have done that. You should have run." Frost made a sound like wind chimes in a storm and pressed its massive head against Owen's chest. The message was clear. Running wasn't an option. Not without Owen. He cleaned the cub's wound with supplies from the medical kit. Frost didn't flinch, even when the antiseptic had hurt. The injury was already closing, accelerated healing, another adaptation to this brutal world. Owen's radio crackled. A voice barely audible through static. Anyone alive? This is Pete Larson. I'm in the East Supply Tunnel with 4 others. The Kravik are everywhere. Owen grabbed the radio. Pete, this is Owen. I'm at the generator room. How many of you? 5, including Amira and Huang. Ruth didn't make it. I know. Listen, stay quiet and stay hidden. I'm coming to you. With what? Our weapons are useless against these things. Owen looked at Frost. The cub stared back, ready despite the wounds, despite the exhaustion. Ready because Owen needed protection and Frost had chosen to provide it. I'm bringing something better than weapons. Owen stood, checking the flare gun one more time. 3 shots. Enough to signal their position to each other. Maybe enough to distract the Kravik for a few seconds. Frost stood as well, moving to Owen's side. Not behind him. Not in front. Beside. Partners. The tunnels ahead were dark and filled with clicking sounds. Hundreds of Kravik searching the ruins for the last humans. Owen and Frost would have to cross through all of them to reach the others. Owen placed his hand on Frost's head, feeling the warmth and strength there. Okay, let's go save our people. Frost's answering growl was a promise and a threat to anything that would try to stop them. The small earth beast had chosen violence, but only for one purpose: to protect the human who had first chosen to protect it. The East Supply Tunnel was 3 kilometers of frozen hell. Owen and Frost moved through shadows that crawled with Kravik. The creatures had spread through the colony's underground network like a virus, methodical and patient. They weren't just killing anymore. They were claiming territory that Frost's bioluminescent fur had dimmed to almost nothing. The cub had learned stealth, somehow understanding that light meant discovery meant fighting. Too much fighting, and even this magnificent creature would fall. So they moved in darkness, Frost's superior senses guiding them past clusters of Kravik that Owen couldn't see. Twice they had no choice but to engage. Both times Frost struck fast and precise. A vibrating claw through a scout's head. A focused sonic pulse that crushed a warrior's internal organs. Then retreat before reinforcements arrived. The cub's intelligence was terrifying in the best possible way. Owen fired a flare when they reached the supply tunnel junction. The chemical light burned red against the ceiling, bright enough to hurt eyes adjusted to darkness. Here, Pete's voice came from a gap between 2 collapsed support beams. Hurry. Owen squeezed through. Frost followed, the cub's body somehow compressing to fit spaces that shouldn't accommodate something so large. More adaptation. More evolution happening in hours instead of millennia. The survivors huddled in a small chamber behind the collapse. Pete Larson looked 20 years older than he had 3 days ago. Amira had a makeshift bandage around her head, blood seeping through. Director Huang held a piece of rebar like a weapon, knuckles white. 2 others Owen recognized but couldn't name sat against the wall, eyes vacant with shock. All of them stared at Frost. The cub had grown again. Now the size of a small car, muscles rippling under fur that sparkled even in the dim light. When Frost moved, the ground trembled. When it breathed, the air itself seemed to respond. That was the little thing from the bunker. Pete's voice cracked. How was that possible? Accelerated growth in response to threats. Owen kept his hand on Frost's shoulder. The species evolved on a planet that wants everything dead. They adapt or they die. It killed Kravik. Huang stepped forward, his eyes calculating. I saw it on the security feeds before the bunker fell. That thing is a weapon. Frost is not a thing. Owen's voice went cold. And Frost is not a weapon. Frost is the reason I'm alive to help you. Amira moved closer, her medical training overriding fear. It's injured. That shoulder wound needs proper cleaning. Frost growled when she approached. Not aggressive. Warning. The cub trusted Owen. No one else. It's okay. Owen stroked Frost's neck. She wants to help. Like I helped you. Frost's ears flattened, but the growling stopped. Amira worked quickly, cleaning the wound with supplies from her emergency kit. The cub's accelerated healing had already closed the worst of it, but infection was still possible. Frost endured the treatment without moving, eyes locked on Owen the entire time. We need to reach the landing pad. Ruth appeared from deeper in the chamber. Owen's heart jumped. She was alive, bloody and limping, but alive. I got separated during the initial breach. Found these 4 hiding here. There's 1 shuttle left. I saw it on my way down. The pad is 2 kilometers across open ground. Huang shook his head. Kravik everywhere. We'd never make it. We didn't make it this far by giving up. Owen checked his flare gun. 2 shots left. Frost can clear a path. You're asking that animal to fight hundreds of those things. Huang gestured at the cub. It's strong, but it's not invincible. I'm not asking. I'm suggesting we work together. Owen looked at each survivor. Frost gets us to the shuttle. We protect Frost from being overwhelmed. Teamwork. The way humans are supposed to survive. Pete pulled out a wrench the size of his forearm. I'm in. Better to die fighting than hiding. Same. Amira grabbed a metal pipe from the debris. I didn't survive medical school to quit now. The others slowly armed themselves with whatever they could find. Improvised weapons that wouldn't stop a Kravik but might slow one down for a second. Enough time for Frost to finish the job. Huang was last. He hefted his rebar and nodded. The shuttle better have enough fuel to break orbit. It does. Ruth's smile was grim. I made sure of that before everything went wrong. They moved as a group. Frost took point, moving with a predator's grace despite the size. Owen stayed close to the cub's left flank, one hand always touching that crystalline fur. Connection, partnership, trust that went both ways. The Kravik found them at the first intersection. .6 warriors dropped from ceiling vents, mandibles clicking coordination signals. They had learned to hunt in packs. Adapting just like Frost, the cub exploded into motion, claws extended, vibrating at frequencies that made Owen's teeth ache. The first warrior died before it finished landing. The second lost its legs to a sideways swipe that separated chitin from joint. Pete rushed the third, swinging his wrench. The Kravik blocked with its mandible. The wrench shattered. The warrior lunged. Frost was there. A sonic blast at point-blank range turned the Kravik into fragments. Pete fell backward, ears bleeding from the pressure wave. Amira and Huang flanked the fourth warrior, attacking from both sides with their improvised weapons. They couldn't hurt it, but they distracted it. Long enough for Frost to crush its head with jaws that had grown large enough to bite through steel. The fifth warrior grabbed one of the nameless survivors. The man screamed once before the mandibles closed. Owen fired a flare into the creature's face. Not fatal, just painful and blinding. Frost finished it with claws through the eye sockets. The sixth warrior ran. Frost let it go, turning back to check on Owen first, then the others. Priorities. Protect the human above all else. They left the bodies and kept moving. 2 more encounters. 5 more Kravik dead. Pete's ears wouldn't stop bleeding. One of the nameless survivors took a glancing blow that broke 3 ribs. They kept moving. The landing pad appeared through a blown-out wall. Frost Ridge's eternal blizzard howled outside, but Owen could see the shuttle. Still intact. Still possible. Between them and salvation lay the Kravik swarm. Hundreds of bodies covered the pad like living armor. They had found the shuttle and were claiming it. No way through. Huang's voice was hollow. Even that beast can't fight that many. Owen looked at Frost. The cub was exhausted, wounded, pushed far beyond what any creature should endure. But those eyes still burned with determination. Still ready to fight because Owen needed safety. I'm not asking you to. Owen knelt beside Frost, pressing his forehead against the cub's massive skull. You've done enough. You saved us all. Now save yourself. Run into the mountains. Live. Frost made a sound like galaxies colliding. A rejection of the very concept of abandoning Owen. The cub turned toward the swarm and roared. Not sound this time. Power. The air rippled. Ice cracked. Metal groaned. Every Kravik on the pad turned toward them as one. Frost charged alone into the swarm, creating a path through pure violence. Owen ran after the cub, unable to abandon Frost even if it meant dying together. The others followed because sometimes humans were stupid enough to run toward impossible odds for impossible reasons, like love, like loyalty, like bonds forged in fire and ice, and the choice to protect instead of flee. The swarm closed around them like jaws. Dying should have been quick. Instead, it was thunder and lightning made flesh. Frost tore through the Krovic swarm like a force of nature that had learned to hate. The cub's roar became continuous, a sonic assault that shattered armor and liquefied organs. Vibrating claws removed limbs with surgical precision. Every movement was violence perfected. Owen ran in Frost's wake, boots pounding across chitin bodies that weren't quite finished dying. The other survivors flanked him, their improvised weapons useless, but their presence vital. They were a pack, a unit. Humans doing what humans did best when the universe tried to kill them. They adapted. Pete swung his broken wrench at a warrior's leg joint. The impact did nothing except make the creature turn. Frost's jaws closed on its head from behind. Amira jabbed her pipe into a scout's sensory cluster, blinding it. Huang crushed its skull with his rebar. The shuttle was 50 meters away. The swarm was learning, coordinating, surrounding them in layers that Frost couldn't break fast enough. For every Krovic that died, 2 more filled the gap. Owen saw the cub's legs trembling. Exhaustion. Too much growth too fast. Too many fights without rest. Frost was burning out like a star pushed past its limits. Frost, stop. Owen grabbed the crystalline fur. We're not going to make it. Save yourself. The cub turned to look at him with eyes that held something beyond animal awareness, beyond even human intelligence, something older and deeper. The understanding that some bonds mattered more than survival. Frost placed its massive body between Owen and the swarm, not attacking anymore, just shielding. The cub would die here, and it had chosen this death. For one human who had shown it kindness in a universe made of ice and violence. Owen felt something break inside his chest. Not physical, emotional. The weight of being someone's entire world. The responsibility of a trust so complete that death was preferable to abandonment. No, he pushed past Frost, standing in front of the cub now, protecting it the way it had protected him. I won't let you die for me. Owen, move. Ruth was screaming somewhere behind him. The shuttle is right there. He ignored her, drew the flare gun. 1 shot left. Not enough to save anyone, but enough to make a statement. Enough to show Frost that loyalty worked both ways. The swarm rushed forward as one. Owen pulled the trigger. The flare hit the nearest Krovic square in its sensory cluster. Chemical fire burned at temperatures hot enough to melt chitin. The creature's screams triggered panic in the others. Krovic weren't used to fire. Their hive mind recognized this as a threat their armor couldn't stop. The swarm hesitated. Run. Owen grabbed Frost's neck. Now, all of us. They ran. Frost's exhaustion forgotten in the primal need to get Owen to safety. The cub's body became a living shield, taking mandible strikes meant for the humans. Chitin scraped crystalline fur. Acid splashed against hide that had evolved to resist this planet's corrosive ice storms. The shuttle's boarding ramp was down. Ruth had already reached it, powering up systems with hands that moved faster than thought. Pete half-carried the survivor with broken ribs. Amira and Huang fought a desperate rearguard action with weapons that shouldn't work, but did through sheer determination. Frost stumbled. The cub's front legs gave out. Too much damage. Too much growth. Too much fighting. Owen didn't think, just reacted. He got on Frost's shoulder, taking weight he had no business being able to support. Adrenaline and desperation made physics negotiable. Come on, just a few more meters. The cub tried. Owen felt every muscle straining. Felt the tremors running through Frost's body. Felt the moment those magnificent legs failed completely. They fell together. Frost's body pinned Owen against the frozen ground. The cub couldn't move anymore. The swarm closed in, smelling victory. Hands grabbed Owen's jacket. Pete and Huang hauling him backward with strength born of survival instinct. Owen screamed, fighting them, reaching for Frost. The cub watched him with eyes going dim. No fear, just satisfaction. Owen was moving toward the shuttle. That was enough. That was everything. Frost. Owen's voice broke. Please. The cub's eyes focused one last time. Then Frost did something impossible. The exhausted, broken, dying creature gathered its remaining strength and pushed. Not an attack. A throw. Frost launched its own body backward, rolling toward the shuttle. Using momentum and the last of its power, the Kravik followed. Of course they did. The biggest threat, the greatest prey, right there. Frost rolled onto the boarding ramp. Owen scrambled up beside the cub. Amira and Huang dove through the hatch. Pete slammed the ramp closure. Go! Owen pounded on the cockpit bulkhead. Ruth, go! The shuttle's engine screamed. Frost Ridge's gravity fought to keep them grounded. The hull groaned as Kravik warriors climbed the exterior, mandibles tearing at metal seams. Frost lay in the center of the cargo bay, sides heaving. The cub had nothing left. Owen pressed his hands against the massive skull, feeling the heat fading. Stay with me. We made it. You made it. The shuttle lurched upward. Kravik fell away or were crushed against the hull. Warning alarms blared. Something critical was damaged. They might not make orbit. Frost's eyes opened. The cub made a sound like wind through crystal caves. Peace. Acceptance. Mission accomplished. Don't you dare. Owen's tears fell on crystalline fur. I didn't carry you this far to lose you now. Amira appeared with her medical kit. Move. Let me work. Owen shifted aside, but kept one hand on Frost's neck. Amira worked fast, treating wounds that would have killed anything from Earth 3 times over. The cub's accelerated healing helped, but there were limits. Even evolution had boundaries. The shuttle broke atmosphere. Frost Ridge fell away below them, a white ball of ice and death that had taken everything but given one impossible gift. The bond between a human and a beast that chose violence not from instinct but from love. That Ruth's voice came over the intercom. We're clear. Orbit achieved. Damage is manageable. Someone want to tell me what the hell that thing in my cargo bay is? A friend. Owen stroked Frost's fur. The cub's breathing steadied. The eyes opened fully. Still alive. Still fighting. Huang sat against the bulkhead, staring at Frost with an expression caught between awe and calculation. Colonial Defense needs to know about this. About what happened here. They will. Owen met his gaze. But Frost is not a weapon to be studied. Frost is a survivor. Like us. That creature saved us all. Pete's voice was quiet. Killed hundreds of Kravik. Adapted to every threat. Grew from the size of a boot to a battle tank in 3 days. Because it had to. Owen looked down at Frost. The cub looked back with eyes that held intelligence and something more. Trust. Partnership. The kind of bond that survived when everything else failed. Amira finished bandaging the worst wounds. The healing rate is incredible. Another few hours and most of this damage will be gone. The shuttle's trajectory stabilized. They were heading out system, away from Frost Ridge and the Kravik swarm that had consumed it. 7 survivors out of 300. Alive because one small creature had chosen to protect instead of flee. Frost's head settled into Owen's lap. The cub's breathing slowed to normal. Exhausted but alive. Safe for now. Owen made a promise in the silence of that cargo bay. Whatever came next, whatever the Colonial Defense wanted, whatever Earth demanded, he would not let Frost become a tool or a weapon or a specimen. The small Earth beast had chosen violence for one human. Now the human would choose to fight for one beast. No matter the cost. 3 weeks after Frost Ridge fell, Owen stood before the Colonial Defense Committee in a hearing room designed to intimidate. Polished floors reflected harsh lights. 50 committee members sat in tiered rows, looking down on 7 survivors and one creature that barely fit through the doorway. Frost had grown even more. Now the size of an earth elephant, the cub's crystalline fur caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls. Every committee member stared, some with fascination, some with greed. All of them seeing the same thing, that a weapon that worked when human weapons failed. Admiral Chin spoke first, her voice carrying the weight of authority. Dr. Fletcher, your report claims this creature single-handedly destroyed over 200 Kravik warriors. Frost didn't do it single-handedly. Owen kept his voice steady. We work together. Survive together. The creature. Chin's emphasis made it clear she didn't see Frost as a person. Can you explain its capabilities? Amira stepped forward with her datapad. Frost demonstrates sonic attacks at multiple frequencies, vibrating claws that shatter molecular bonds, accelerated healing, rapid growth response to threats, and intelligence that approaches or exceeds human baseline. Approaches human intelligence. General Park leaned forward. Are you claiming this animal is sentient? Frost made a low rumbling sound. Not aggressive. Almost amused. The cub understood the question, even if it couldn't answer in human language. I'm saying Frost makes choices. Owen placed his hand on the cub's shoulder. The choice to protect instead of flee. The choice to fight alongside humans instead of alone. The choice to trust. Fascinating. Admiral Chen made a note. We need specimens. Breeding pairs. Frost Ridge must have other survivors. Absolutely not. Owen's voice went cold. Frost is not livestock. The Kravik are spreading across 3 sectors. Park stood. His uniform covered in medals earned fighting battles that were all lost. Every weapon we deploy fails in those conditions. Plasma freezes. Electronics D. Mechanical systems seize. But these creatures thrive. They evolve for exactly the environment that kills our technology, which is why we need to return to Frost Ridge. Owen had prepared for this argument. Not to harvest, to partner. Partner with animals. Chen's laugh was sharp. Doctor, we're fighting a war of extinction. Sentiment is a luxury we can't afford. Sentiment saved 7 lives. Ruth stepped forward. I was there. That creature fought when it could have run. Kept fighting when it should have died. You want to know why? Ask him. She pointed at Owen. The room went silent. Owen felt the weight of every gaze. Felt Frost press closer. The cub's warmth a reminder of what mattered. Frost fought because I showed it kindness first. Owen's words fell into the quiet like stones into still water. I studied Frost's mother for months without threatening her. When I found Frost alone and terrified, I offered protection instead of exploitation. The cub remembered. The bond formed not from training or coercion, but from mutual respect. Respect. Park's voice dripped with skepticism. You're asking us to believe this creature has emotions? Loyalty? That's anthropomorphization, Doctor. Frost stood. The committee members in the front row leaned back instinctively. The cub was massive, powerful, capable of reducing this entire room to rubble in seconds. Instead, Frost moved with careful precision, walking to Owen and placing its enormous head against his chest. The gesture was unmistakable. Protection, affection, choice. Anthropomorphization requires projecting human traits onto something that doesn't have them. Amira's voice carried her medical authority. What if the traits are actually there? What if we're the ones failing to recognize intelligence that doesn't look like ours? Philosophical debates don't win wars. Chun stood. The committee has decided. We need access to Frost Ridge's ecosystem. Specimens will be collected for study and potential militarization. No. Owen stepped in front of Frost. You're not listening. These creatures are not weapons. They're people. They're animals with useful traits. Park moved down from his seat. And Earth needs those traits to survive. Your emotional attachment is noted, Doctor, but irrelevant. Then I'm irrelevant too. Pete stood. Because that creature saved my life. I won't help you turn salvation into slavery. Amira joined them. Same. You want my research? You accept that Frost and its species deserve partnership, not imprisonment. Huang surprised everyone by standing as well. I'm a practical man. I wanted to use that creature as a weapon, but I watched it choose to protect us. Watched it nearly die for people it barely knew. That's not programming. That's character. The committee erupted into arguments. Voices shouting over each other about military necessity and ethical considerations and survival at any cost that Frost's roar silenced them all. The sonic assault was controlled, precise, just loud enough to hurt ears without causing damage. A demonstration of power. A reminder that this creature chose cooperation but could enforce it if necessary. That I end the ringing silence. Owen spoke. Frost Ridge still has survivors. cubs hidden in the mountains waiting for their parents to return. They're orphans now because the Kravik killed everything. We can go back with guns and cages, prove we're no better than the swarm. Or we can go back with open hands and prove humanity deserves allies. And if they refuse? Chen's question was genuine. If these creatures attack us, then we leave them alone. Owen's answer was simple. We find another way to fight. We don't become monsters to defeat monsters. Admiral Chen studied Frost for a long moment. The cub stared back without aggression or fear. Two intelligent beings measuring each other. If we approve this partnership approach, Chen spoke slowly. You understand the risk? These creatures could be weaponized by our enemies, could turn against us. So could humans. Owen gestured at the committee. You trust us with weapons. Trust Frost's species with the same choice. The vote took an hour. Owen didn't watch, just stood with his hand on Frost's fur, feeling the cub's heartbeat steady and strong. When Chen returned, her expression was unreadable. The committee approves a return to Frost Ridge. You will lead the expedition, Dr. Fletcher. Your mission is to establish contact and offer partnership, not to capture or coerce. And if it fails, Owen had to ask, then we find another way. Chen's smile was tired. You made your argument well. Perhaps humanity's strength isn't just our weapons. Perhaps it's our ability to recognize strength in others and choose cooperation over conquest. 2 months later, Owen stood in Frost Ridge's eternal blizzard. Frost waited beside him, now fully grown and magnificent. The cub had become a guardian, but the bond remained. From the mountain caves, shapes emerged. Dozens of cubs, each one alone and afraid. Orphaned by the Kravik. Survivors like Frost. Owen knelt in the snow, extending his hand, offering nothing but kindness and hope. The first cub approached slowly, 6 legs moving with uncertain grace, crystalline fur catching the pale light. It sniffed Owen's hand, then looked up at Frost. The guardian made a sound like music in crystal caves. Permission. Trust. The cub pressed against Owen's chest, choosing connection over fear. Others followed. Slowly at first, then in a wave. Cubs surrounding the humans, not as weapons or tools, but as partners who had learned that some humans could be trusted. Frost watched over them all, the small beast who had chosen violence for one human and, in doing so, taught that human how to choose peace for an entire species. The war against the Kravik would continue. But humanity wouldn't fight alone anymore. They had allies now, not through force or exploitation, but through the simple revolutionary act of kindness in a universe that had forgotten how powerful compassion could be. Owen looked at Frost, at the cubs, at the future they were building together. Thank you for trusting me. Frost's answering roar was joy made sound, echoing across the ice as the blizzard finally began to clear.